Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is being broadcast from University College Cork. My name is Chris Williams. I'm a historian. I'm also head of the College of Arts, Celtic Studies and Social Sciences here at UCC, and it's my great pleasure to be moderator of today's webinar. I want to begin just by welcoming, I think we've got almost 200 people signed up to today's session, which is a fantastic response, and a great thanks really to my colleagues here at UCC who have put this on, Angela Veal and Ciara O'Halloran. And thanks as well to the really superb lineup we've got of panelists who are going to speak on the subject of communities of care, creativity and social innovation in our cities and regions. And I'll say a few words of introduction for the panelists in just a moment. But I just wanted to say a little bit really at the beginning about the importance of this subject to us here in UCC and to me personally. I'm not from Ireland, as you might have gathered from my accent. I actually come from South Wales, and in my academic career, I've been very heavily involved in community engagement work at universities in Cardiff and in Swansea, and through other third sector organisations such as the National Museum of Wales. So when I came to UCC as head of college 3.5 years ago, it was really tremendous to see how core to UCC's mission is this issue of civic and community engagement. And I think none more so than in the College of Arts, Celtic Studies and Social Sciences. The college is a very broad college. We have 10 schools. They range from applied psychology and applied social studies through the creative disciplines like film, music, theatre, English, history. We have a range of language subjects, Irish, of course, and a range of social science subjects, including sociology, criminology, government and politics. And I've left a few out there as well, so my apologies to my colleagues in archaeology and geography and classics, and I'm sure there's education. You know, a fantastic range of disciplines and a real impetus from within the college to work with people in the city of Cork, in the province more generally, and across Ireland on a variety of different initiatives. And I think one of the things that's really struck me is that not only is there that energy and that will to connect and to take the university's interests and research out into the community, but it's more than just outreach. It's very much about co-creation. It's very much about empowering our partners in the communities and working with a range of organisations across Ireland to bring value, added value to what we as a university can offer. So it's tremendous, I think, that we've got a panel which is going to reflect on some of the issues that we've been experiencing over, I suppose, really the past year now almost, in the context of the pandemic. And each of the panelists is going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then there'll be an opportunity for us to have a panel discussion. So I would encourage people, while they're listening to our panelists, if they have questions, if they have comments, pop them in the chat, and I will endeavour to use those comments to structure our panel discussion we'll have after the 5 presentations. So I'm just checking now, because I think we've got all the panelists in. So are we happy to go with the original running order? I'm looking at panelists' heads nodding. So in which case we're going to go in this order. First up will be Alan Daly Mulligan, who is an artivist. She's a Quercus Active Citizenship Scholar here at UCC, and she's the current affairs editor of the UCC student magazine Motley. Alana will be followed by Kate Morris, who is the National Coordinator for the Irish University Association's Campus Engage programme. Third will be Tanya Benotti, who is Director of the Government's Creative Ireland programme, which is focused on culture and well-being. Fourth will be Fiona Carne, who is Director of the Glucksman here at UCC. And finally, but by no means least, is Eileen Gleeson, who is Chief Executive Officer of the Cork Opera House. So without any further ado, I am going to pass over to our first speaker, Alan Daly Mulligan. Over to you, Alana. Oh, and could I remind everyone, please turn your mics off while the presentations are ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Before I get into my talk, I'm going to start with a poem. I wrote it in October 2019 before all of this madness erupted into our world while I was on study abroad in the United States. I suppose the point it's trying to illustrate is the power of art, that we can reinterpret it to give us solace. It's called Outsider History. There are outsiders always, you assure me, as I rearrange my face to suit astronomers in this strange observatory. They point telescopes at identity, claim we share stars in our respective skies, and declare ownership of every emerald shining in their eyes, but are wrong. There are outsiders always, you assure me. I grimace as they hold on to their beliefs, but keep their distance from the history, the trauma, the turmoil. They don't know our bloodied mortal soil, the smell of tilled dust dug up by a plough of stars, nor the sound of moon waves collapsing over one another as I soak among discarded corpses, my drowning lungs swelling between two bodies of land that don't want my body, seasick for a country I never lost because I never had it. But your words are refugee ships home, wherever that may be. They are the rising smoke signals that seem solid, but then cruelly dissolve only too quickly. Why are we the outsiders always, Ivan? I don't know which part of me is banished to our forgotten mythology, or why the branding hurts when it is not real and does not burn. I hide behind the feathered blades of your mother's fan and softly gulp back the galaxies I have been star-trapping for myself. The suns I have hidden for ransom as this hemisphere's fear eclipses quicker. The trees burning, the sky churning myths. We lie on our backs, looking up, swimming in a ceiling of black. I try and relax, hold back all of these panic attacks of being unremembered or misremembered. My breath is a line to follow with an index finger to catch my next Irish January. I know you know these feelings too. So I breathe out a prayerful picture of you on the cold glass, playing master puppeteer of future past and present with my tear. Tell me, is fear being outside history or being without it? So that's just a little introduction, and hopefully the points I bring up in my little time I get to talk with you will kind of illustrate why that's important and why this idea of interpreting art to fulfill our needs and, I suppose, empower our communities is so important to the work I do as an artivist, but also my work in Motley, which I'm going to be focusing on mainly. So I am, as Professor Williams mentioned, I'm a Quercus scholar, and I'm an unconventional final year student in my final year of an English and History degree. But I suppose what I'm going to be talking about today is my role as a current affairs editor at the university student magazine Motley. I also just want to say thank you to Angela and Kira, who invited me to talk on this panel today. And I'm really excited to chat with everyone about this issue because it's so important now to talk about the value of the arts in this industry and our industry, because it's been one of the hardest hit. And when I was preparing for this talk, I was conscious of two things. Firstly, I don't have a lot of time to tell you how much the arts has shaped my life and made it infinitely better. Like I'm sure some of my fellow panelists today, the arts is hugely important to me, not just from a career standpoint, but from a nourishing of the soul standpoint as well. And the other thing I was conscious of is this time last year, I was at my most artistically unproductive I think I've ever been. I'd just come back from my study abroad. I was burnt out from art and activism and overwhelmed by the woes of the world that come with being a moody adolescent. But of course, we know what happens next. The pandemic hit like a train. And my gosh, like so many others, I was not prepared for the deluge of motivational quotes and crafting blogs that would fill the internet over the next few months, although it was amazing to see so much Seamus Heaney being fired in all directions of the internet. And despite the want to reject my art and my creativity, it didn't seem to be possible because it allowed escape from the pandemic. It gave me a sense of purpose that what I was creating was hopefully doing good and helping people. But of course, the work we're all doing today is not about us. It's about connecting communities and further developing the bonds between the strands of art and activism. And the way I see it, we love art because it allows us to imagine a better world, and activism invites us to set out and implement that change. My philosophy is when we combine these two principles, we can do good for the present while remembering the past in order to build a better future. And there appears to be no time like the present to do this work for change in this almighty pivot that we have the chance to pay attention to our governments, ensure they support our communities in the right ways, but also take this opportunity to check in with ourselves and create the art we want to create. And from that, think about how we can use our art to give back to our communities and to curate hope. To bring Motley in, our mission is really simple. We're a platform for student voices and issues that otherwise would go unnoticed. And we've been doing a good job of it for some 15 years, covering all manner and matter of things. But when my editor contacted me in May last year about applying for the current affairs position, I was reluctant to get involved because I had planned to take 2020 off after reporting on the experience of being an international student in Trump's America with all the weird and wacky challenges that came with that. But for all the humming and hawing, I was propelled forward by the opportunity to help curate a chapter of hope and progress for students like myself and all the magazine team who want to know how we can be forces for good in these strange and unfamiliar times. So in a little under 8 months, we've brought issues from all around the world to the pages of the magazine in a new, exciting, colorful, fun format, with as much personality as the students that it represents. We've talked with MEPs passionate about the environment, TDs, local councillors, inventors revolutionizing farming for people in Southeast Asia, coders trying to crack Americans' gun violence problem, feminist activists, the head of research at Google, we're especially proud of that one, disability rights activists, pop stars, turned activists, and then what you might just consider normal people living in the moment trying to get by. We've spoken with everyone from protesters involved in the democracy riots in Belarus, talked with students online about online college, housing inequality. We've spotlighted the epidemic of sexual assault that's plaguing our universities. We've confronted the issue of direct provision, and we've been consistent in covering the issue of the mother and baby homes in the last few months. What we strive to do is create a space where people who want to improve their writing and get involved in campus life online can, where we can connect a global network of activists to share their stories and their craft for good, where we can challenge our beliefs about the world and demand change from that. About a week ago, I made the mistake of going on Twitter and reading a comment that a student had posted that people involved in student media act like they're all the lead characters in All the President's Men. And while admittedly I love a good journo movie as much as the next person, and the thoughts of being likened to Robert Redford in any scenario is very cool, it annoyed me, which is the first mistake you can make on Twitter, but it annoyed me because if you can do good, if you can change things, if you can curate hope, if you can do something that you love and help change and help other people, then why wouldn't you? Literature has proven time and time again to define moments, and in this country our independence is a testament to that. And it was Yeats who said literature is the great teaching power of all the world. As a journalist, as a student journalist concerned with current affairs, and by default of that telling the truth, this year we strive to illuminate issues that are being neglected by the coverage of the pandemic, while simultaneously moving forward, curating hope, encouraging participation so that people can bring art into their lives. And as we slip between the various Zooms, Microsoft Teams meetings, and Google Meets, if that takes your fancy, we are connected to people, and most importantly, we're connected to change. Growing up in Waterford's vibrant arts community and falling in love with Corks has given me a place to express myself, and maybe most importantly, figure out what I want to express. In my view as a writer, my role is to show people that we can create a better world, and the words are the blueprints to achieving that. Whether it's poetry, prose, journalism, or any other medium, telling stories is important because it's what makes us human. And we love art because it lets us see change in motion. As creatives, in the many forms that it takes, we are making our way through this pandemic with one common goal, that we want to make a difference. And while art can offer us a chance to escape, we need to rethink and reimagine that and see it more as an opportunity to restructure and develop so we can create this bigger picture and so we can curate for the next moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Alana, for getting us off to that so powerful and inspirational beginning today. That's really fantastic. So I'm going to pass over now to Kate. Kate.
Hi, good morning, everybody. And I think I pulled the short straw because I have to now live up to Alana's epic introduction, but I'll do my best. And thank you so much, Alana. That was your poem was spectacular, and it just reminds me how much I have put my own creative endeavors to the side, and you get so caught up in the work and the the drill that is every day, and how important it is to nourish your own inner artist. So I'd like to thank UCC most sincerely to inviting me here to speak today. It's a real honor, and I am very grateful for the opportunity. But I woke up today and it was wet outside, but I did feel hope. So I'm going to try and bring some hope to this conversation, because I feel like many people are, struggling getting through these last few weeks. So, we've got to think of things like, the buds on the trees, the bird song, the potential of the dawn chorus for the insomniacs around us, the vaccine, the change of administration across the waters. There's loads of hope, there's loads of positivity coming down the line. And as Luke O'Neill reported yesterday, there's hope of beer gardens with friends in the summer or in Ireland, but at least that's something to look forward to. And it's Friday. Let's also mention that. So I'm going to crack on, and mine is it's a little bit more kind of my contribution today is trying to set a scene that it's kind of it's going to be a call to action from this group of individuals to work together beyond this event, that we need to be organizing ourselves to position what we call here in Campus Engage is an engaged, community engaged, transdisciplinary approach to addressing societal challenges. So I'm based in the Irish Universities Associations, with the 7 presidents of the universities meet on a monthly basis to talk about policy, practice change, strategy. So I'm quite strategically positioned in that sense. And our case is around bringing research users, so bringing not only the researchers and the innovators in institutions, the engineers, the artists, the historians, but also the civic civil society members, the public, the Parkinson's disease individuals, the rest, older people, to the conversation, to the research and innovation table, through the educational process to address societal challenges. And the fundamental case is here that no social innovation is realized or is impactful unless we have the artists, the human scientists, the natural scientists working together and in collaboration to implement an innovation for change. And innovation translating to change in human behaviors. Yeah, so whether you're talking about a piece of technology like a phone or a vaccine or whatever it is, we need transdisciplinary groups of individuals to realize impact. And they're cottoning on to this in the European Commission and in Horizon Europe. Their funding calls are looking for these types of teams to work together to be successful in their criteria to actually access European funding. But anyway, back in Campus Engage, we are working collectively, collaboratively with teams to build training, building human capacity on campus, off campus in this field. We're lobbying, yeah, like the rest of them out there. We're lobbying for this in policy, through policy briefings, through conversations with the policy decision makers. We're also, when you think of the Programme for Government, yeah, Programme for Government is this lovely glossy document full of aspirations. It's got everything in there. It's got, the emissions crisis, we need to address that. We need to address the direct provision, which will probably be like the sagas of our mothers and babies' homes in the future. Affordable housing, COVID, health services. It's all in this Programme for Government. And our argument is you can't address these challenges in the Programme for Government unless you're working with the researchers, the innovators, civil society, and the research users collaboratively. And I would argue, and I would position, looking at this from a national perspective, that UCC and Cork are early adapters in this space. And that comes from strong leadership. I mean, strong leadership from the bottom and the top. Since I've joined this role in Campus Engage, I've worked with spectacular individuals who've given above and beyond, like the Catherine O'Mahony's, the Kenneth Burns, more recently the Ruth Halleys and Martin Galvin's, but also your previous president and your existing president, great champions for this work. And also the infrastructure that you've put in place in UCC seems to be effective in my eyes. I know everything has its problems and its challenges, but you appear to be early adapters. And I think that the indicator for that is that you have an event here today where over 70% of the participants are actually from off campus. That is a massive indicator from success in my books. fed up with talking to each other. We need to stop talking to each other and start collaborating and working in partnership for change. Also, let's remind ourselves, UCC is ranked first globally on the planet as the sustainable university on the planet. So that doesn't just happen overnight. It comes through hard work, collaboration, leadership, etc. So, bringing to mind, we are facing not just one societal crisis at the moment globally. We're facing three. We're facing fake news and a mental health crisis. And this is something that's playing out now, but it's going to be hitting us like a kick in the face down the line, I would argue. So we need to be working together to address these number of pandemics. And again, these cannot be addressed working in isolation. We need to work together collaboratively in transdisciplinary teams to address these. And I would argue the arts, for me personally, although I'm not doing enough of it, is the one solace myself and my partner, others, would find turning on a podcast, picking up most recently the Epic of Gilgamesh, or listening to a piece of music. It takes you away from the constant media messages of the negativity, and it is just the best escape route. And it builds that resilience in us. It builds the resilience and the hope, and it builds community, that shared feeling or human state. So I want to look back to the structures that are in place to support this work, okay, and that we are working on and with for change. So the funding models that exist to support this transdisciplinary approach. So the artists working with the engineers, working with society to address societal challenge. The IRC has the Coalesce funding calls, the New Horizons funding call. SFI has their societal challenge call. HRB has their PPI, public patient involvement calls, and Horizon Europe, as I mentioned, we're working closely with the European Research Council and the Vice President there on implementing new criteria and award systems for engagement. So really there is a thirst in terms of political change and funding change, but it's at early stage, I would argue, of implementation. And in Ireland, we have our new science strategy that's pending. Our existing science strategy does mention this and call it out. However, there is further change that needs to happen. That's all very good. It's surface level change, but we need more systemic change. And I understand that we're working to change the metrics that are down on paper to measure research and innovation impact. It can't just be about H indexes and citations, and it needs to be much deeper and much richer, which I know many UCCs academics are working on. Early intervention, prevention programs in community. How are we measuring the impact of these? The work academics do with policymakers and CSOs in terms of housing, building affordable housing, social housing. This is happening, but are we measuring it, and are we telling the stories of the university's success, and are they being rewarded for it efficiently and effectively? But also we need to talk about the infrastructure on campuses. The funding models are changing, the policy is changing, but our campus is changing. And I read a fantastic document the other day at universities in Switzerland where their campuses are changing their models. So their units, their apartments are now looking at addressing societal challenges. So you might have a climate change department with artists, with English professors, with engineers, data programmers working together to advance disruptive technologies or early intervention programs, working with farmers, working with aviation industry. So maybe we really we need to really push the agenda here and push ourselves to reimagine and be strategic and think around corners and be as competitive in a global market for higher education as we can be. And again, cleverly wrapping this around the Sustainable Development Goals. Certainly at a more micro level, I would be very much asking all of us, in particular in UCC, to work together. So Alana, Evelyn, Fiona, Tanya, your role and all of the other members of this audience is to seek out positions on new science innovation centres. There's a big announcement on SFI of another tranche of SFI centres. You need to be on those centre steering committees. You need to be challenging what they're doing, how it's impacting societal challenges, and working with, they're only too keen to work with civil society organisations, but we need to build those partnerships and break out of our kind of comfort zones. Also, I would say that the mechanisms also to funding, like we're on the route to progress, but we need a more fundamental change in terms of incentivization for civics and civil society organisations to work with researchers, in terms of new funding models that actually fund and pay experts within civic society organisations to work with researchers and innovators, and to acknowledge the experts, their expertise role much more strategically. And then in an institutional level to have promotional criteria for staff that recognise their work in this space. But we're working on this in the background with your colleagues, your experts from UCC and their associates in communities, and we're working to influence the new science strategy 2027, to influence the review of the National Development Plan, to make sure this approach to addressing societal challenges is deeply embedded in that and funded for, and continue to work with the funding agencies in Ireland and at a European level to try and implement this change. We have recently signed off on a policy briefing we will send to each department, whether arts, it's new title, arts, what is it? Can't remember, it changes so regularly, but the new Department for Arts and used to be Heritage, and whether for Children and Youth Affairs, for Agriculture, and it's a policy briefing that is calling on those ministers to look at their priorities in the programme for government and to work with the funding agencies and the breadth, the most advanced or expert in universities and civic society organisations to address the societal challenges through the programme for government. So my ask of members and on the call today is to work with higher education. The appetite is there, the system is moving, the structures are moving, and we need to collectively continue to push for that and be heard and to lobby for that in the most constructive way and helpful way possible. Because I'll tell you, the civil servants want to work with us. They're only looking for the opportunity to find solutions. So we need to stop working in silos and as victims and work together for change. And that's my call of action from this meeting today. And just to acknowledge again the fantastic work of UCC. You are doing what appears to me at a kind of a bird's eye view is you're doing really well, and I think and I encourage you to keep going and set ambitious targets.
Thank you very much indeed, Kate. That's absolutely fantastic, and thank you for the compliments to UCC. Much appreciated. And I know there's an awful lot of work that goes on in the institution, and really important. So we're going to move now to Tanya. Tanya. You're on mute, Tanya. You're not on mute now.
Can people hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So hello, everybody. Smashing to have such a great audience and really appreciate all the different perspectives of Kate and Alana. So I've been just asked to talk a little bit about the Creative Ireland programme, which is a beast of a programme, but perhaps two specific things that we've been doing in the last year or two around the piece around creativity in communities, and picking up on what Alana said about giving back to communities and curating hope. So I'm going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour through some of those things. And although it might seem strange to say it, COVID has almost been the making of the Creative Ireland programme and what we try to espouse. And although Alana is right that the arts community has been very, very badly hit by COVID, it has also brought to prominence and to value what the arts and culture and the creative sectors bring to Ireland. So we are a very ambitious all-of-government strategy, and we were set up at the end of 2016 when many of you will remember 500,000 people on the streets of Dublin and every local community thinking about what Ireland was 100 years on from 1916. And when we were set up, the Taoiseach said that we were a well-being programme. And the big, hairy, audacious goal is how do we put creativity at the centre of public policy, which is probably something that no other government had at least announced the ambition of doing. And it is a very, very big ambition. Just to give you a bit of a sense of the structures, hopefully my screen will move on. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but basically we are an all of government initiative. There are only 4 all of government programs: Healthy Ireland, Creative Ireland, Global Ireland, and something called Better Outcomes, Brighter Futures, where no government policy that affects young people can be implemented without consulting young people beforehand. So although I'm based in the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media, and by golly, is that some title, I also report to Martin Fraser, the Secretary General of the Department of the Taoiseach, and to the Cabinet. And I've thrown that slide up there, I suppose, because when I was talking to Angela ahead of the conference, she said there would be quite a lot of researchers on the call. So to date, although every government department is meant to have a relationship with Creative Ireland, these are currently the departments that we're working in. And I'm more than happy to kind of shed light on any of those. But picking up on what Kate was talking about, the climate crisis, one of the things we'll be launching later on in February is quite a substantial fund with the Department of the Environment, thinking about how the arts and culture and creative sectors can engage the public on the climate crisis in an imaginative way. Because if climate change is effectively a culture change that's expected of all of us, who better to bring about that culture change than the cultural sector? And again, not too many models for this across Europe at a national level. But we're going to be very excited to launch this new initiative with our partners in the Department of the Environment, a substantial fund and a challenge. It's a creative challenge and it's a climate challenge. And it's about going beyond awareness raising to behavior change. You know, a lot of the projects that we have looked at that have been funded to date by different people, almost all exclusively focus on young people, when all the research shows young people do not need convincing about the climate crisis. There are plenty of other cohorts where behavior change is urgently required. But yes, you might be surprised to think that culture and creativity has an impact on all of these different departments. So for example, with the Department of Foreign Affairs, you may be aware that the Irish government has an ambitious Global Ireland strategy. We're going to double the number of embassies worldwide, and we're thinking about how Irish culture and the creativity of people living in Ireland can be a way of talking about ourselves in the world, a sort of tool of global diplomacy. So happy, as I say, to answer any questions, but this is the current range of departments that we're working with. Oops. So just a quick whistle-stop tour through the original 5 pillars of Creative Ireland, and things have really shifted even in the last 2 to 3 years. I'm going to focus on Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, but just to say there is a very ambitious programme of 640 million euros for the national cultural institutions, some of whom are on this call, a new national theatre, a massive extension to the National Concert Hall, refurbishment of the National Library, and so on. We also, as I say, have a plan for a roadmap for the creative industries that we're working on, and we're working with our colleagues in Foreign Affairs around that international image. But specifically, the theme of the conference today around communities, creativity and care. So we have a very big, hairy, audacious goal, which is to enable the creative potential of every child in Ireland. And when I was given my marching orders by the Taoiseach at the time, I was like, yes, what an incredibly ambitious goal. But of course, all of these things are going to take time to roll out. We are currently working in about 20% of all primary and post-primary schools in Ireland across a range of projects, some of which you may have heard of, like creative schools, creative clusters, music generation, various initiatives which are trying to put arts and creativity at the heart of schools, and for each school to think, depending on where they live and the cohort of pupils in it, for the students in that school to think, well, what does creativity mean for me personally, and how does it live across school life? We have an extensive number of projects out of school, particularly trying to target the most disadvantaged children and the children at risk of dropping out of school. And again, using arts and culture and creativity Some of you will be aware of existing initiatives like Fighting Words, set up by Roddy Doyle around creative writing. We're working with Sing Ireland, Youth Theatre Ireland, lots of different creative tech initiatives, rolling out all kinds of different things, using arts and culture and creativity out of school. And then the big lesson, I guess, from other countries, change will not come to education unless teachers are supported to explore their own creativity and be confident about using it in the classroom when they have obviously a lot of curriculum to develop. So, as I say, a very extensive body of work around children and young people. What came to the fore during COVID was our big creative communities work, about 14 million spent over the last 3 years, which is a large sum of money. I know that I have on the call the Creative Ireland coordinator for Cork City Council, if she wants to say a few words later. But the structure of our work in local communities is through the local authorities. So all 31 local authorities in Ireland have a Creative Ireland coordinator, and they have what's known as a culture and creativity team. And you might ask, what is that when it's at home? Well, basically the promise to the local authorities was that the Creative Ireland programme would put money on the table if local authorities brought together, in some cases they already had, but in others it was new, a minimum of the librarian, the heritage officer, the biodiversity officer, the arts officer, and the community development officer as a start, together with the local enterprise board, to set up a culture and creativity team. And really the idea is, what does creativity look like within local government? How might the arts and culture work with the planning department or the roads department? How might it have a role beyond the existing role that local authorities have? So obviously there's a lot of work done in the library service, in the arts office, in the heritage side. But what would happen if we brought it together in a more powerful way, rather than people working in silos? And we have a very sort of, the essential idea is, does what you're doing at a local level contribute to the well-being of the local people in your community? Anything to do with social cohesion? We've seen some really smashing projects in that area. And what does it do for economic development, particularly arts, culture, and the creative industries? So it's been an absolute eye-opener and a real proof positive. Conscious of a lot of Cork people on the call, you will have seen the Ardu graffiti all over Cork City. That's thanks to the Creative Ireland programme in Cork City. So a very active programme within the city, looking at linking together all the, I guess, the infrastructure that exists, many of which you'll be hearing from, like the Opera House and the Glucksman, but really with a person focus. And I suppose I'll probably just end on two things. Angela asked me to talk a little bit about research. It's probably fair to say that when we set up Creative Ireland, we were set up at speed straight after the Ireland 2016 programme. So we didn't start with a huge amount of research baked in, but as we've been going, we have certainly tried to do it. So recently we've just announced 2 research grants in the area of creativity, wellbeing and young people, one with Dr. Michael Finneran in UL and another with UCD. We do have the Creative Ireland Fulbright Fellowships, 3 for those on a PhD track, with nominated institutions like any of the Smithsonian institutions, the Exploratorium in San Francisco, and the Harry Ransom Center, and one for professionals that just want to go to the States and work with a creative organization over there. We're funding a postdoc researcher in TILDA. Those of you who know TILDA, the Longitudinal Survey on Aging, the largest ever research project involving the over 50s, looking at how participating in creative activities contributes to well-being. Because I'm guessing most of you on this call wouldn't be here if you didn't believe implicitly, intrinsically, and powerfully that doing creative things contributes to your well-being. And essentially the well-being of people in Ireland is our greatest national asset. So as we age, I'm convinced, but I would love the researchers to be able to prove to the Department of Health and the HSE that participating in those kind of activities contributes to your well-being and has a measurable impact on your health. Then we'd be really making progress with our health colleagues. So finally, I guess there's some other less academic research which you will find on our website. And I thought I'd just finish, conscious of time. I'll see if I can play this, but one of the things we've been doing in the last year, about the middle of last year, the Taoiseach contacted us, and the Department of the Taoiseach rather, and said, what could you turn around at very short notice for people living alone and people in nursing homes? you know, given that you have a whole structure of creativity teams in every local authority. So what I'm going to do is play you just one or two. I might have only time for one. These are projects thought of locally that we just think are absolutely brilliant and have taken off like a rocket since we started COVID. So before I play those videos, anybody who's interested, this is where you can find us if you want to follow us on social media and on our website. And I'll just see, praying to God that this works, if this video will play. So here's just an example of some of the things that we've done in the last 6 months.
We're not getting the sound, Tanya. Is there some sound?
Well, look, then in that case, I will just leave it. I knew it was probably too much to hope for. But yes, they're basically projects where we worked with mummers traveling up and down the country, starting in Leitrim. And another was where we asked professional musicians, those working in the National Concert Orchestra, to set up something called COVID Care Concerts, which essentially is professional musicians touring around to nursing homes and care home settings, performing outdoors, repeat visits to people in nursing homes and those living alone, and really just a moment of joy, a moment of pleasure in their isolation. So I will provide the presentation, and you can certainly find those films on our YouTube channel. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Tanya. We are going to try and share it. Actually, Kira, I think, has the technical expertise. So, Kira, do you want to see if you can play it?
It's really helped, and I feel great after it. Yes.
I was so happy. The nicest show I enjoyed for a long time.
It's great for their well-being, really. It's really increases their memory and relaxation, and they just love it. They love it. And a lot of them have good singing voice as well, so you know, it's great.
Sarah, Sarah, what will be, will be. Now I've a daughter of my own. She asks her mama, what will I be?
Well, for me, it's an amazing difference. So singing is communication. Music itself is a process rather than a product. You know, it's about communication with other people. And if you're on your own, there is no communication. Music ceases to be.
What will be, will be.
So I remember the first one in John of Gods that we did, which seems a long time ago now, and we all actually came off crying because it was quite emotional. First of all, to have the reaction of ourselves. Someone actually clapped for us when we did something and when we played. And then also seeing their reaction to what we had done, because I think for them it was very emotional to suddenly have live music. It's so important in life, and I think we underestimate the power of it, actually.
You know, sometimes as musicians, we feel that what we do isn't terribly important. We're not like the doctors and the nurses, and we feel a bit, you know, useless at times like this. But as my 11-year-old daughter said to me, Mammy, people are feeling depressed and down, and you sing these songs and it could mean something to them that you'll never know about. And I thought, out of the mouth of babes comes the truth, you know, and it just gives us a lift, and it makes me feel very, very purposeful at this point in time.
Being able to play myself with my friends
to play for people, to share, communicate through music. It's like I've clicked back into who I am normally, and it's just amazing to remember that.
Really, it's given us that kind of positivity in our lives again. And then obviously to see the effect it has on the residents and the service users when we visit residential care homes and hospitals, it's really overwhelming to feel that we can contribute in a small way to other people's mental well-being.
This feature is brought to you by Creative Ireland in partnership with RTE, supporting the arts. Supporting artists, supporting us.
Thank you very much indeed, Tanya and Kira, for sharing that with us. That was just amazing there. I did smile. I could see that it must have been quite windy, those clothes pegs holding the music in place. That was tremendous. So next up is Fiona Carne, who is director of the Glucksman. And I just wanted to share my first experience of the Glucksman with you, which was a really positive one. So I came to UCC on the 9th of March 2017 to be interviewed for this job. It was my birthday, as it happens. And after the interview, I sort of staggered out somewhat dazed after an hour and a quarter of being grilled by the interview panel. And I found my way to the Glucksman, where I had a great early lunch. And then I wandered around the exhibition that was on at the time, which was, I think, called Gut Instinct. And I do remember one particularly striking exhibit in that exhibition, which was an entire wall painted with Nutella spread. And a few weeks later, I brought my wife and children back to Cork on our first visit to the city, and took them to the Glucksman to see the Nutella spread, and it had gone. And my sons, who are big fans of Nutella, were devastated. But it was just a really fantastic experience to go into the Glucksman and see just, you know, this kind of really impressive and experimental and provocative art at the heart of the university campus. So great pleasure now to ask Fiona Carne to speak. Thanks, Fiona.
Okay, let me just bring this up here. So unfortunately, this is exactly what our galleries look like at the moment. They're completely empty. Thank you, Angela, Chris, and Kira, for inviting me to speak today. I think the concept of care is particularly important to me because the word curator comes from curare, the Latin to care for. And along with my colleagues in the Glucksman and indeed across the university, the last year has been an immense challenge as we figure out how to care for the artistic, civic and academic communities which we work with. But we work with them in the Glucksman by trying to coax them in, as Chris has remarked, to enable them to feel that the university, the wider university campus, that wider research that's happening across all 4 colleges is accessible to them. So it was a huge challenge for us to think about what it means when we closed back in March. And I think, like many of my colleagues who are on the call here from cultural organizations, we sought to use the digital sphere as a place of engagement, and we immediately embarked on 2 initiatives. One to highlight how artists were being impacted by the pandemic. So this was a digital online sharing by 15 Irish artists of, you know, what it meant to them at that point to be confined to 2 kilometers and working from home. And the other was creativity at home, which was a series of online kind of creative activities. They're predominantly designed for those of us who are parents who are kind of at home now with kids, to give them activities to do. And we had huge success with the engagement in this initiative. And I think when it was selected by the BBC as one of the best websites to keep you creative in lockdown, it kind of exploded for us and went global, because of course, being in a global pandemic, it meant much more than Ireland was in lockdown. But I think all the time I was just so incredibly aware of what it meant for the communities that we work with who require additional supports to participate in our creative activities. So one of the things we kind of did straight away was that we organized an art supplies drive for 3 communities that are very, very important to us: those young people who are living in direct provision, the traveller community, and children who are confined to family hubs, so who are homeless. So that was some small way of trying to enable them to participate in these creative activities that at that point we could only communicate with digitally. But we were already thinking beyond that. And this particular quote was stuck in my mind because I remember at the time when Sana said this, it was at the launch of a film that the Glucksman had developed in partnership with 2 colleagues in applied social studies. And to pick up on Kate's point, this was funded by a grant from the IRC. Katrina Nilera and Eileen Hogan were doing incredibly important research with young people in direct provision that was facilitated through the creative practice that was happening in the Glucksman. And we wonderfully got a red carpet moment for these young people and also enabled them to, as is key for that project, to express their voices and views in the public domain. And Sana said that the Glucksman had become home to me, a place where you can come and express yourself. And I just felt, wow, this is it. We've kind of done it. You know, we've made our university and our gallery really feel integral to this young person's life. But when the pandemic hit, I just couldn't get the idea out of my mind of what does it mean to be confined to home during a pandemic when it is a place of deprivation. And it brought me back to one of the reasons that we got involved with young people living in direct provision was, again, through the College of Arts, Celtic Studies and Social Studies and the work of colleagues there, Mike Fitzgibbon and Jackie O'Riordan, who'd sent around these really terrible images by young people. This was circulated about 6 years ago on the University All Exchange Users Network. And one of the things that must immediately strike you is just what extraordinary creativity, but to what terrible ends. And knowing these images had kind of sent us on a journey where we had moved specifically to remove these children from these environments, to bring them into the gallery, bring them into university with immense support from our student community. And just again, to recognize the extraordinary work of people like Alana on our campus. The young students who work with us have a society called Fáilte Refugees, and they've been working with us consistently for the last 5 years as volunteers so that these children can come and truly feel like, as Sana said, that the Glucksman is home. This was at the launch of the University of Sanctuary Initiative. So wonderful to feel that those young people felt so empowered that they could introduce our now interim president, John O'Halloran, to make the official launch. So what we did was we thought about how could we continue the projects outside. And this summer we, with the support of Cork City Council and the Arts Council who fund this project, we continued the work that we do, moving the practice into the spaces around the gallery. And here you see Maka Ugona and Sarah posing for photographs. They worked alongside the artist Kate O'Shea with input from artists like Joe Caslin, curated by my colleague Tyke Crowley, who has just built up an extraordinary sense of care for these communities alongside our education assistant, Lucia Taubler. And we got permission, and I think, again, just to pick up on the points of what might be possible in COVID that wouldn't have been possible before, to use the places and the city as our canvas. And they installed these incredible images as murals, images that they developed themselves, questions that they wanted to pose back to us all across. This is a wonderful site in Curls Quay in Cork City Centre. And critically for us, on the facade of Cork City Library, which, you know, is right on the middle of Grand Parade and a really important civic building. And that sense of ownership, I suppose, that had been enabled by them coming on campus was suddenly now extended to a sense in which it was initiating a dialogue with the entire city. And they truly are, as you can see in their own words, forces of nature and posing such important questions to us, like what is colour, and using their own presence even in a time of COVID, to remind ourselves and all of us in Cork of the diversity in our city and our responsibility, I suppose, towards that diversity. We were thrilled in Cork anyway to get the cover of the Irish Independent. That was a wonderful sense of it going national. And it is a huge part of the creative agency work that we do, that we try to engage wider society in a conversation about what is happening, but initiated obviously completely by the young people themselves. And so as we thought what we could do next, and unfortunately, as our galleries remained empty again, going back into lockdown in October, and we were very fortunate to have been funded by the Arts Council to do a tour of this Viewpoints exhibition by creating limited edition prints. And so we sent it to direct provision centres, to rural schools, and to different communities, to bring into their spaces at least some sense of that hope that Kate was speaking about, and joy that you can find in art practice. And in fairness, this whole model was based on an investment made into the Glucksman by Creative Ireland, and a very important initiative that we began 2 years ago called the Classroom Museum. And I have to say, this one for me was a real tough one, because I absolutely want to support children in rural classrooms, but the idea of lending the precious works from our art collection out into these really busy spaces was definitely a leap of faith. But what happened was, of course, that those children gave extraordinary care to the artworks and used them as a platform to develop their own amazing creative responses. Here you can see works by the artist Garrett Phelan. The previous slide was the artist Fiona Kelly visiting the artist. Here you have the artist Deirdre Breen down in a tiny little school in Glandore. You know, it's literally one of those 2-room primary schools, and the children making these, you know, fantastic responses. And I think that's challenged us to really think about how we are going to work going forward. I think there's a lot of discussion about the blended model between digital and real world, but I think for those of us who are responsible for organizations and spaces, we need to think really about how we blend our model on site with our communities as well as off site with our communities. And this is, with the support of Cork City Council, we did a project towards the end of the year, which again loaned works from our collection, works that had been co-created with the artist by communities back into those community spaces. And here you see from what has become an incredibly poignant series of works by us, by the artist Megan Eustace, which she developed with members of our senior community. And initially these works developed as drawings, and the project obviously had to be halted halfway through because of the pandemic, but continued in a series of conversations. And the artist used the kind of absence that you can see there, this kind of erasure of the people in a place. But obviously that takes on an added layer of reflection at a time when so many of our senior community, and in particular the kind of nursing homes that Tanya has reached out to, have seen that erasure in the terrible statistics that we've had to deal with over the course of the pandemic. So for me, art becomes, in this case, a way in which these people made this work of art with this artist. They have an ownership and a way of talking about some of the things that are just so incredibly difficult to talk about, and begin some perhaps process of catharsis, of working through something and having still this sense of being able to feel like creative agents in their own right. We loaned them a series of works to a library up in Ballyfahan, and because what we're also aware is it's going to be a big job to encourage people to come back to the Glucksman even when we do open. And we thought by loaning works out to libraries, it's like a first step of, you know, you might be able to just go within your 5 kilometers to go and see something, and to have that sense that we're still here and we still want to be here for you. And this work by Colin Crotty, I think, pulls together so much of what I've tried to touch on today. It's a portrait that was created in partnership with rural healthcare workers. The artist working alongside those healthcare workers to learn about their practice. We did creative workshops with that group, which they themselves hugely valued as an outlet for themselves. And here he has made this extraordinary portrait of a young family being treated by a nurse in a direct provision centre. You can see like the fridge on the wall, that kind of, again, sense of confinement, but that we've put it out in the children's section of a library, where we hope that even if those children cannot come as far as the Glucksman, that they might be able to get to their library to see art and to know that we are still here, even if the here of that cannot be our gallery for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fiona. It's really powerful testimony there, I think, to the importance of the creative arts and so much of what we've been missing over the last 10 months or so. So that brings me to our final contributor today, and that's Eileen Gleeson, who's the CEO of the Cork Opera House. And I noticed somebody in the chat said that, you know, one of the things they've really missed is live performance. I think we'd all echo that. Certainly here in Cork, you know, going to the Opera House, going to the Everyman, going to the Arts Theatre, that's all been a really important part of my life for the last few years, and it's been a bit of a gap since March last year not to have those things. But we look forward, hopefully, to seeing some activity in those spaces within the next 10 months. So Eileen, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. It's really lovely to hear from my colleagues in the arts and to hear such positivity and I suppose such, you know, amazing forward thinking about how we will move to the next point. I'll just open my presentation here. Okay. So I thought I'd start by just giving you a little bit of an overview of what Cork Opera House is about. We see it as a place where artists are cherished, protected and supported, a place that prioritises breaking down any invisible barriers and presenting something for everyone. And it is our mission to present a wide and broad ranging programme of events so that nobody is excluded, nobody in our community is excluded. We are the country's largest non-profit producing house. Essentially, we produce, I would say at this stage, pre-COVID, about 1/3 of the programme, and that's across musical theatre, music events, theatre events and pantomime. We are Ireland's first learning theatre through a fantastic initiative we have with UCC that's now in its 3rd year. I'll talk a little bit more about that in time. We have been cherished by the people of this city for the last 166 years. We average about 300 performances a year, so it's, you know, it's open a lot. We're very, very busy venue. Pre-COVID, we would be welcoming approximately 200,000 patrons through the door annually, which when you think about it is a pretty phenomenal number. We employ up to 100 people, depending on the time of year. And I think it's important to just give a little bit of context around our grant income versus our earned income. Approximately 5% of revenue is it comes from grant aid, and the rest of our revenue comes from ticket sales, our programs, our shop. Now that's obviously different this year with the landscape that COVID has presented, but I suppose in normal times we have a huge dependency on our box office, more so than many other non-profit organisations. So it very much informs how we operate. This is just a general overview of the type of programming we do. You can see music has a big place in our stage. We do a lot of family programming, and a good share of that would be the pantomime that runs for 66 performances every year. We do musical theatre, opera, dance, comedy. So it's a broad and varied programme of events. So I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience of programming during a pandemic. We decided last year that we needed to adapt and we needed to continue to work, and that was going to be a priority for us. As a mission-driven organisation, if we weren't meeting our mission, then there is no reason for us to exist. And I think as an organisation, we made the decision that, okay, it's time to adapt, it's time to see what's possible, and it's time to get out there again. We have a role to play in the well-being of society. We heard Alana talking about curating hope, and I mean, that's such a hugely important part of the work that we do. Everybody has been stripped of their coping mechanisms throughout COVID. We don't know how to filter what's happening in our worlds. And I think, you know, as an arts organisation, we have a responsibility to, where we can, to assist in that and to help I suppose, engage and reconnect with our patrons. We must retain our relationship with our patrons. That's absolutely vital. The pandemic will pass and we will open again to the public, and we will have these brilliant, wonderful live events, and everybody will be back. And it would have been really important, I think, to have reached out to our patrons and been with them throughout this difficult time. And that's, you know, I think a really, really important part of why we would program during this pandemic. We have to provide the platform for the artists. The artists, it's their talent and their passion that make our business a success. We cannot forget them in this time. It's absolutely our responsibility to stay with them, to concentrate on creating opportunities for them. And in particular, I think for the Opera House, it's the first time in a long time where we cannot focus on having big events like the commercial reality of now is that's not possible. Nobody's allowed into our building. So we have the space and time to talk to the artists in our community and to, I suppose, develop work and think about the future and concentrate on long-term planning and really bring them back into the fold. Like we don't have to do events that will fill a house of 1,000 people. There aren't many opportunities in COVID. I think we could all agree that there are probably more threats than opportunities, but there are a few, and I think it's really important that we acknowledge those, in particular in our industry, and we grab them by both hands and we run with them. And I think the opportunity to think about the future, think about our plan, who do we want to be post-pandemic? Who do we want to be in the new world? And the Opera House is taking the time to do that now. And that's a really, really important step for us. And I think it will enable us really on a successful path of recovery. In that, I think it's really important that, you know, we have all been aware of a number of venues and bars and all sorts of places around the country having online programs, which has been like, there's been an absolute, it opened our eyes to so many things, and we've been able to see things in places we never thought we would get to. And that has been incredible and really important. But I suppose from an Opera House point of view, it has been very important for us to present a program that was unique to us. We also needed to make the online experience for the patron something more than looking at the stage. We needed they needed to be a sensory experience that reminded them of what it was like to be in our space. And we did that by adding a personal touch where we could, by making sure that they felt that they were part of the experience that was happening. Now, we learned a lot from our online program, and you know, it was definitely probably the steepest learning curve that the organization had ever been on, considering that we'd never done anything like this before. I mean, of course we can put on shows and we do that all the time, but it's more, how do we engage and communicate to our community during this really, really difficult time? And you know, we learned a lot. I wanted to include the slide here that shows you the winter program. It ran from October through to December. We had a really, really great take up on this, and we had a lot of very positive feedback, and we had a lot of people, you know, I mean, obviously it's not ideal, and there's nothing like being in a house with live music. There's nothing like sitting in the auditorium of the Opera House and experiencing things live. But at the same time, the responsibility is on us to continue to bring this work out there. And this is how we did it. And it was mostly a music program, actually. And lots and lots and lots of musicians from our locality featured. And it was a really great platform for people who we would never have got the chance to present. So it was a fantastic experience, and one that we hope to repeat. So I just wanted to outline one possible programming scenario for the remainder of this year. And I think the way we're approaching it in the Opera House is we're taking it in bite-sized chunks. One of the most difficult things about COVID is this inability to plan anything. It's devastating, it's toxic, you can't really, it's very hard to move ahead. And scenarios are constantly changing. Every 3 to 4 days, you know, any plan that I may have had last week is now different again, you know. So this is a way of, if we've decided to take things in quarters, so, you know, we can make decisions that affect us in the here and now, and we can be ready to make decisions for what's going to happen in a few months' time. So potentially what may happen in quarter 1, we've decided that we won't have a program. We need time to restock. We need to put our funding in place for the year, and we need to just, I suppose, to just kind of take the time to really look towards the next couple of months. Quarter 2, we would like to have another online program, and we would hope that that's possible. In Q3, potentially, we might be able to welcome people back into the house with limited capacity under level 1 and 2 restrictions. And then in Q4, up to 350 people, perhaps with some lifting of restrictions. Now, this is just one possible scenario, and there were many. I think in this case, it would probably be, halfway towards fully opening again by the end of the year. And who's to say that with the rollout of the vaccine program that we won't be making the decision to open fully, and that would be wonderful if we were in that position. But whatever happens, we as an organisation needs to be solid and ready for what's ahead. I just want to touch a little bit on the relationship that we have, the partnership that we have with UCC, the very important partnership. And I think even more than ever, it's important now. When we set this up, we had lots of ambition, and we had lots of really great conversations with the university and with people from within UCC about what does this mean. It was set up to be a unique partnership to inspire, educate and mentor students and industry leaders of the future. And I have to say the last 3 years have been a real turning point for the Opera House in terms of reaching out to the community and reaching out to the university and learning and listening and hearing how important our role was and what our role was. It's now in its 3rd year. As part of the pillars, we've had internships, we have a PhD student, we've had artist in residence initiatives, shared initiatives between the two institutions. And among the pillars of the partnership, we developed a master's in arts management and creative producing. And I was very privileged and lucky enough to be part of the part of the group of people who discussed what that was. What does this mean if we are to present arts managers out into the working world? What kind of skills do we need them to have? And for me, it's very important that they would be exposed to the cold face of what working in an organization is like and what working in a performing arts organization is like. This year's cohort will be the first cohort of arts managers to enter the industry in an almost post-pandemic world. They will have spent this year looking deeply into our industry, assessing organizations who are operating, how their mission is performing, is it standing up, is it falling down? And I suppose I will be working with these students for the next 4 months, and they will have first-hand experience of the decisions that we're making in the Opera House to put us on the path to survival and to recovery. And I think that that's going to be an incredible asset to our industry. And I have to commend the university for taking the risk on this great initiative and for backing it. It certainly is an honour to have the opportunity to work with the next generation of arts managers and to really give them the experience of making decisions, in particular during COVID. So in conclusion, I think if we are to survive and to continue to work, it's very important that we keep producing work, we keep investing in the art and the artists, we allow the artists to do their jobs of telling the story of our time, we adjust our offering to create a new engaging customer experience, we continue on our path as a learning theatre, and we will always be open to the conversation with any of the people working in UCC, and we've had an absolutely fruitful and wonderful experience to date. We continue to reach out to our partners in the community, and now more than ever, our sector needs the continued support of our stakeholders. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Eileen. That's just, again, thank you for all the work that you and your colleagues have been doing from the Opera House in the community in these very, very challenging circumstances. And I know I speak on behalf of colleagues across the college and across the university when I say we really treasure and value our partnership with you, and we're looking forward to seeing a deepening of that over the coming years. So colleagues, we've had five or six really good presentations, and we have about 10 or 12 minutes for some questions. If people who are on this call want to put any questions that they might have into the chat, I can share those with the panelists. But I thought what I would perhaps start off with is a question for everybody, just a quick question. And it's really, I suppose, looking forward to when the pandemic, in a sense, is no longer governing our lives. Eileen was talking there about how, you know, there might be a partial reopening, or of course at some point one imagines we'll be back to something like pre-pandemic conditions in terms of the possibility for gathering. And I suppose my question is, it's a question that we've been thinking about in the university in terms of, you know, learning and pedagogies, but it's a question for you as engaged activists in this cultural space. What would we learn from this experience that would change what we do in the future? Is there, rather than just sort of surviving the pandemic and coming out the other end and thinking, thank goodness for that, it's over and we can go back to what we were doing before, I'm imagining that for you, as for those of us who are thinking about you know, delivering university teaching, there are things that we will do differently because we've learnt new skills or we've spotted new opportunities. So I'm perhaps throwing an opportunity here out to the panelists to say what they might like to see as a different practice in the future that'll be of benefit. Tanya.
I suppose, Chris, one of the things that I'm hoping is that we've really begun to start to develop a relationship with the HSE and the Department of Health. And I suppose there's been a long history of probably 30 years of the Arts Council funding arts and health initiatives, but perhaps that sense in which the health side of the house, do they value it? Do they see it as crucial to a mental health strategy and a well-being strategy for people? So the thing I'm going to take forward with me into post-COVID is, having shown and demonstrated all of us the kind of value of this work, will that value be appreciated by the health side of things? Because I think that would be real progress.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else want to? Eileen?
I think, Chris, it's important to note the use of technology that may not have been there, you know, even a year ago. This idea that we can present our work online to anyone in the world, it's an exciting opportunity to me. To think that people in Australia or anywhere in the world can join and watch our Christmas concert, or they can be part of a very special one-off event that they would not be able to attend otherwise. I think, you know, it's certainly something that we're considering in our future, is this continuation of streaming events from our venue. And that just wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if it wasn't for COVID, you know. And there's an important, I suppose, commercial question to be asked about whether or not that's possible, and how can that inform the organisation as a potential other revenue stream. So I think that has been a very positive development for our venue, and I'm sure a lot of other venues would share my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Fiona.
Yeah, I think that certainly one thing that's really come into focus during the pandemic is that sense of reliance, actually, that people have on the creative arts, both in terms of enjoyment, but actually for their own participation. So picking up on what Tanya said, I think beyond health, it's across all areas and disciplines within our university. And we have such wonderful examples of that in CACS, Chris, your own college. And I feel that the kind of research that Kate has been talking about, that's been coming for a while. We've seen this idea of elements of creative engagement being asked for as part of research initiatives. And, you know, Ursula von der Leyen has just announced this Bauhaus call shaped around the idea of artist design innovation. So one of the things that we have to do is not let this be a once-off webinar. It's absolutely fantastic for the Glucksman to see half of our cultural colleagues on the call and half of our academic colleagues, but that is too rare. And we need more of the kind of matchmaking that has happened through the Opera House, that happens in an ongoing way through Creative Ireland, through initiatives in the Arts Council, so that it is a sustained strategy for the university to benefit from the funding that is inevitably coming. Because, you know, I think that this has only now COVID has just sharpened a set of changes that were happening, and that's going to be accelerated. And we need to be there to enable those, you know, partnerships to happen, because I think there are probably a lot of artists on the call that don't know how to engage with the university, but would love to be involved in some of the kinds of projects that we've been speaking about.
Thank you, Fiona. We have some questions popping up in the chat. So we have a question for Kate and Tanya. Which type of artists are you engaging or looking to engage with to create collaborations for societal change, and how can artists submit their proposals for potential collaborative environments? Are you focusing on local artists or welcoming artists based in England or elsewhere?
I can take that. We don't generally fund artists in the UK. Sorry to whoever posed that question. And how you apply, well, I suppose there's two ways. If you go to our website, there's a creative communities page. So, you know, the 14 million through the local authorities that I referred to, you simply, based on where you live, you reach out to your Creative Ireland coordinator in that area. But other Irish artists, we've put a tremendous amount with the Arts Council of support and training to develop what are known as creative associates. These are artists that we want to work in schools and with children and young people. So you can apply to the Arts Council to be a creative associate. So yeah, lots of different ways, but unfortunately none for UK-based artists. Apologies.
I'll just add to that, just off the top of my head, the Irish Research Council has a funding called Coalesce, and it has another funding called New Horizons, and they're promoting working with the likes of the Arts Council or HSE or other government-funded agencies to address societal challenges. And I would say, I would ask you to look them up, read them, and if you don't see yourselves in there, contact them and say, why am I in there? And if I'm not, why aren't we? You know, it's pushing the transdisciplinary agenda forward. But besides that, I think we also have a kind of responsibility on the higher education institutions. A lot of us are today sitting in our nice, comfortable, I'm in a child's bedroom, whatever, with that, which we've transformed into an office. But we're lucky. We're still in our jobs. You know, and like what a privilege for many reasons we're in this position, the cause and effect of being in these positions. But the institutions to call on their role and the responsibility to invite in artists to. So we were planning this session with Angela and others, and we need musicians. We need them to be doing an interval for this, to open it, and I think we've got a big opportunity here. So I get once a day, twice a day, get offered to do a webinar, to attend a webinar. Why not bring artists into the opening, to the intervals, to the closing, and pay them? We don't have to pay them a huge amount, but we have to pay them a decent going rate. I'm not talking, you know, up the going rate. We pay them a decent going rate, like we're all paid a decent average wage, you know. So I think there are creative ways in bringing artists into our everyday lives during the pandemic, and we need to be creative. And artists, you need to push the agenda as well with us, because we're not thinking, you know, this is it's not the top of the burning list issue. But I know that I think many universities, both Ireland, the UK and above and beyond, would be delighted to do that.
Thanks, Kate. I've got a question for Alana, and it's how can new international students get in touch with you to explore collaborating with Motley?
Yeah, so we have a website, motley.ie. You can go on there, all our contact details, depending on who you want to write with. So there's a few different departments. There's current affairs, that's where I am. There's features and opinion, there's fashion, and there's wellness and entertainment as well. So depending on where you want to write and where you want to develop your area of writing, we'll support you, we'll give you feedback on your piece, and we usually send out an email to every club and society on campus. Actually today we're releasing our 4th edition of our magazine, so there should be an email going out to everyone this evening where they can get involved, they can engage, and follow us on social media, I suppose, as well.
Thank you very much. I have a very specific question for Tanya, which is about the Creative Ireland programme, and wondering what can you tell us about the next steps, given that the current programme is due to conclude next year?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Chris. I mean, we were never envisaged as something to be around forever. We were meant to be an instigator of change. But I think what we're discovering is that, you know, if we want to bring change to certain things, it's going to take longer than we thought. So that's currently with the Taoiseach and the members of the current government. But we're expecting that there would be some sort of decision by the state this year if Creative Ireland is going to continue or not.
Thank you. I have a question here, which is about social innovation education. So there are programs which aim to facilitate social innovation in a creative, proactive and impactful way. many teams this year engaging in mental health and wellbeing projects. How can these students be supported by partners on this call in terms of amplifying the youth voice and supporting and encouraging their innovative actions? Does anybody want to pick that one up?
I'll just briefly mention, I know if it's the Young Social Innovators work, which is a phenomenal project. I think it's one of our most inspirational projects, or units, offices, initiatives in Ireland, and we'd be only delighted to connect in better with you as a kind of an earlier intervention for longer term kind of student skills and brilliant students going into various creative or other work environments with all these amazing skills. So we'd love to connect in with young social innovators more constructively, but I do think educators and the likes of Ruth Halley in UCC is looking for organisations like Young Social Innovators to work with them through the curriculum. And in terms of community engaged learning, Cork are really doing, UCC are really doing fantastic work in this space. So I'd encourage you to contact Ruth to start a conversation on campus.
Thanks very much, Kate. Well, we're coming to the very end of our scheduled time now. We were due to close in 22 seconds. So I think it's perhaps appropriate for me to wrap this up with a thank you. Thank you to everybody who's been on this call. I noticed that I think at its peak we had 129 people. A few of them have disappeared to find a sandwich, I imagine, in the last 20 minutes or so. But great to see so many participants. Really wonderful presentations from everybody. You know, I really struck by Alana's opening there and talking about curating hope, which I think is a fantastic idea. I'm actually going to recommend to the head of the School of History that he sets a question, Alana, for all final year history students, which is fear being outside history or without it? I don't know if your fellow students will thank me for that, or thank you, but it's a great question. And I'm also looking forward to those beer gardens. You know, I got up this morning and it was, you know, it's a Friday, yeah, but it's a Friday just like Thursday, just like Wednesday. But coming in and having the opportunity to host this, you know, has been just really given me a boost. So thank you very much to everybody, and thank you to Angela and Kira for having done all the work in organising this. I hope this will be the beginning of a series of conversations, both virtually and then, you know, fingers crossed, let's hope we can begin to do at least some of this in real time in the same room at some point in the not too distant future. So thanks very much, everybody. Have a great rest of the day and a good weekend. And we look forward to things improving in the near future. Thank you.